Welcome, thank you. My name is Brent Dunn. I'm a financial planner, a CFP, and a CKA as well. I'm going to be speaking about a topic that I love a lot, I'm passionate about. I don't love the title of my talk, Stop Writing Checks for Charity. I do want to get that idea out there, but there's a better extension of that. I'm going to talk about ways to give non-cash gifts and talk about charitable giving after tax reform. I think we're at the intersection of a really important time for us to really be aware of opportunities that we have and our clients have to give differently. So I guess I'll get the I want to share this, I guess, first. And this would be like lifting up a prayer, I guess. But Lord, hear our prayer. Do not help us. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Then we will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. I'm going to talk about different paradigms. I think we've seen some of this already today. We've been challenged to consider things from a different standpoint. So there's going to be quite a bit of that during the talk today. I also meant to add one thing to my comments. A good friend recently recommended a book to me called Rooting for Rivals. And it's written by Chris Horst and Peter Greer. It's a fantastic book. Talks about what might be accomplished, how we might build the kingdom of God if we did not view each other as competitors. And that could apply to churches and ministry leaders of all kinds, and certainly wealth advisors. I don't consider any of you to be my rivals in any way, shape, or form. I'm rooting for your success as well. If there's anything in here that you can use to grow your practice, I want you to use it. Take any ideas, any images that you can use to share concepts with your clients. I wish you great success with that, and I hope to pave the way for you in some way if there's anything here that you don't already know or you're not using. So on the paradigms, I think the person who told me what that word was, what that word meant, paradigm, talked about the Swiss watchmaking industry, and they make watches. They used to make watches like you see on the left. The Swiss evidently invented the technology for the quartz watch, but they failed to patent it. And what we have here was the very, very, very smartest people in the world knew how to do something one way, and they missed an enormous opportunity. Apparently it was very disruptive to the industry and to the society, I guess, there in Switzerland when they lost so much market share. And this happens to people in other situations. Somebody shared with me that Kodak is a similar story. Kodak thought that they were in the film business, and they actually invented the digital camera, the technology for the digital camera, but they failed to do anything with it. So I'll leave that off, except just to point out it's possible that some of the smartest people in wealth management, and we've heard from some of them today, but and I'm not actually, that wasn't a good way to insert that, but some of the smartest people in wealth management might be approaching wealth management in a particular way. They might need to see a different way of doing that. This could also apply to people that are doing fundraising. There are people that are really good at that, but they might be doing it in a way that is missing a huge opportunity. And so I just want to lift that up. The only thing I'll leave off with that is that I think it is not easy for us to adopt a new paradigm. We've developed a way of looking at things, and maybe we can pray about it, and God can help us change our paradigm if we need to. So I'll leave it at that. So this was the cute title of the talk, but let's stop writing checks to charity ourselves. Let's help our clients stop writing checks to charity, because there's a different way for them to give that will allow them to pay less tax, to give more, and keep as much or more for themselves. So I just hope to reveal some of those things. We've practiced this. We've helped many of our clients find ways they could give twice as much, or 5 times as much, or 10 times as much. If you look at the lifetime and the estate plan, sometimes 50 times more, sometimes even more than that. So I want to reveal as much of that as I can in the time that we have. There's a question here at the top of this, or kind of a statement. We're the wealthiest people in the world, but it doesn't seem that way. And why is that? One reason, one dimension of that is how we give. And I don't know, that was I was thinking some of what was spoken about earlier today. I don't know if that reality is always obvious to us, but I question this. Why is it that God planted us on the planet at a time and a place where we and our neighbors or our clients have more resources than any people have ever had in all of history? I just think that's something worth thinking about. And just to kind of reveal this, I imagine you've seen this before, but the statistics are that individuals mainly give from cash. 90% of the gifts given by individuals is in the form of cash, or writing checks typically, but cash is a relatively small part of most individuals' net worth. And so people bump up against their giving limits very quickly when they're giving from a scarce asset. And we have, in our own community, we have dozens, if not hundreds, of wonderful ministries and nonprofits that are starving for resources. And it's partly because people have not learned how to give. And I think that's up to wealth advisors in many cases to instruct them how they could give differently. So that's just, I guess, some images there. So we have this sense of scarcity, but we should have a sense of abundance. So I'm going to pause here and just ask a question about this. But should wealth advisors, should we encourage our clients to give more generously? And I usually start with pros and cons, but what are the cons? Why would we not bring this subject up? Does anybody have a sense why they might be hesitant? If anyone would have anything to offer? Too personal. Is that already up there? No? Okay. I think that was, it's a personal matter. It's, okay, so it feels that way. You know, I used to think that talking about matters of faith were too personal as well. And Kingdom Advisors has given me a lot of courage in that area, that it's okay to share my faith and to ask clients about their faith and ask if they would like to have their plans built in a way that are consistent with the teachings of their faith. Just out of practice, I've gotten pretty confident about doing that one. But I think this is a big one. It seems like a personal matter. And yet, I think there's a way to bring up the subject that will not offend. Are there any other reasons why, if we're a financial planner, say, are there any reasons why we wouldn't encourage our clients to give radically and generously?
This is a selfish reason, but you're potentially giving away assets that you could manage.
Yeah. So I think it's, and before I go to the selfish, I think if I'm a financial planner and I'm trying to help, I'm not a big believer. There used to be an ad where the number's floating over the person's head. We're trying to get them to that number. I'm not a big believer in that idea, but conceptually we're trying to help people save and build resources and liquidity. And so it seems that this runs counter to the idea if we were to encourage them to give more away. And that might come to us in our businesses. Often the way we make a living is through assets under management. We're paid a fee based upon how much the client has, and if they're giving money away, there's less, they have less, and we have less as well. So there might be more there, but those are the ones that I thought of. And I think on the other side of it, I'm going to I'm just going to share a little bit on the other side here, but then start to show some evidence, and maybe I'll just start there. We've found it to be absolutely fantastic for our clients. It's nobody comes to us and asks us, would you please show us ways we could give more generously? I haven't had that happen once. But almost every time we show clients how they could give more, but give differently, and people or gravitate to that. They'll act upon that. If we can give them confidence that there's a way that they could give differently and give more, they will give more. I find it really fascinating that medical science has found that people who give generously are happier and healthier people. And I think most of us love our clients, or at least we like our clients, we want the best for them. And this is really an awesome thing if we can actually help clients get to a better place. And I've witnessed that a few times where we've just revealed ways to a client they could give, and they've given more. I'm thinking of one client in particular right now who wasn't exactly in the fetal position when we met them, but they had been abused and gotten bad advice and just always timed everything wrong. They invested too late and they suffered losses and just a terrible cycle. They'd been told that they needed to get to this big number floating on above their head. And we didn't share in the same way of giving advice. We showed them ways that they could pay less tax and get double tax benefits by giving differently. And this client now is a much happier person. They're calling us twice a year and asking us, to help them put more into their giving fund. I'm going to talk about giving funds and donor advised funds in just a second. So we have found this to be absolutely great for our clients. The financial and tax benefits can be more substantial than you might realize. Sometimes our intuition is not very helpful here. Our intuition would lead us to believe that our client's going to be worse off and we're going to be worse off. We've found often the opposite to be true, and it's been great for our practice. Again, nobody's asking us for ways to give more. We're showing them, and they're doing that. We're building much deeper relationships with our clients. We're learning a lot more about them. They're bringing us other assets to manage, or they're referring clients to us. God seems to be blessing them and us in unexpected ways. The financial and tax benefits can be significant. It isn't quite as simple math as, you give more, you're going to be better off financially, but you're going to be better off in some way, and it seems that we see constant benefits from this kind of advice giving. So again, our business has done pretty well with this activity. I'm going to take just a second here, and I'm going to do it very quickly. One of the most powerful talks that I've heard at a Kingdom Advisors event was from Jim Wise, and Jim took probably a good hour to unpack this completely, so I'm just going to touch it, but he shared verses out of these Bible verses here, talking about two different kinds of skilled craftsmen. And so there are skilled craftsmen that are mentioned in the Bible that are building idols that are causing people to drift further away from God. And then there are skilled craftsmen who are building the temple, and they're helping people draw closer to God. And Jim sprung it on me. I didn't try to spring it on you here. The question was, what kind of a skilled craftsman are you? Jim just laid this all out so beautifully, and then just kind of sprung it on us, helping us realize we are the skilled craftsmen of the day, or at least we're among the skilled craftsmen. What kind of skilled craftsman are you going to be? Are we going to build a financial plan and an investment portfolio that's going to become an idol to our client? Or are we going to help them with a plan that allows them to lay up treasure in heaven and draw closer to their God? So, I don't know, that just helped me. That idea solidified for me what I felt like I wanted to do in terms of what kind of skilled craftsman I wanted to be. That talk is available on the KA website if you wanted to listen to it. Obviously, I did not do it justice in just a few seconds. This is something that if you can use this, I've been using this for a few years to describe two paradigms. On the left-hand side, I'm going to describe how I think most of the industry and how most people approach planning. They give most of their attention to the bigger circle, financial planning, mainly about retirement planning and investments. They might have one or two advisors in that space. They might read a lot in that space. They give it a lot of time and attention. The blue dot that you can, or the other green dot that you can see says estate planning. Most people, I think, go see a different advisor every 10 or 12 or 15 years. They've been meaning to go for 5 years at least before they go, and it's to talk about their estate plan. Those two things don't necessarily get connected all that well. It's an uncomfortable time for a lot of people. It's a subject matter that they don't enjoy. The terminology is unfamiliar. The clock is ticking, it's expensive, and so people kind of put that off quite a bit, I think. The little blue dot up in the left corner says charitable planning. We think most people don't do much charitable planning. They do charitable giving, but we think there's something different there between giving and planning. And so if you approach planning that way, at least when we serve people in this part of the world who have income and education and access to health care, if they've got some resources and we plan that way, they're going to take care of themselves, they're going to take care of their family, they're generally going to give 2 to 10% of their income to charity. and then they're just going to pay whatever taxes and expenses are required of them. We think this is a little bit better paradigm. Let's look at these things and look how to integrate them. And it's really quite remarkable that there is this sweet spot where there are ways to do things that can actually enhance benefits in all three areas. I've been given an unusual career path. I had an opportunity to live in that intersection all day, every day for a dozen years. I was with a firm that specialized in charitable trusts and foundations and donor advised funds, and I got to work with a lot of sophisticated financial planners and estate planning attorneys around the country. So I don't know how to give you that 12 years of experience, but I want to give you something today that was revealed during that time period. When you approach planning this way, what we find is that we can still take care of ourselves and our families, sometimes as well or better. Sometimes part of it is we discover how much is enough, but we'll have very satisfactory results for ourselves and our family, but we'll give much more to charity during our lifetime and through our estate plan, and we'll pay less taxes. This is a great conversation starter. Feel free to use this if you think you could. Most people find that interesting, and then they want to hear examples of it. So that's what I'm going to share with you, and so maybe you could use this as well. Okay, but I'm going to pause with this one. I meant to say here, we're a relatively small firm. We're serving a couple hundred families, maybe a little bit more than that, but we've taken maybe 200 families through this kind of a process where we're looking at an integrated plan. We've got a couple of really wealthy families, but a lot of other just millionaire next door. Those are a dime a dozen in Hamilton County, Indiana. I'm being a little smart-alecky, but people that have worked hard their careers, had great education, saved in a retirement plan, bought a nice home, got it paid off, millionaire next door. We have a lot of them here, but we've helped maybe 200 families change the way they're doing their whole lifetime financial plan and their estate plan, and we think that the change in the giving will be over $1 billion from those 200 families. If I took out 2 or 3 families of the highest net worth, that would still be something like $200 or $300 million. So the 80-20 rule still comes into play, but even millionaires next door. I'm going to give you an example coming up here in a few minutes. Someone that you might say, well, that's a really good client, but it's not an ultra high net worth type of client, and we'll see how many different ways that person could give more during their life and their estate plan. So when I think about this favorite quote from Henry Blackaby, we should attempt things so great they're doomed to failure unless God intervenes. I've not set a lot of goals for my practice, but one thing that we began to do at a certain time was set what we call BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious, God-sized goals. And so the first time I set a goal was that I'm going to help facilitate $100 million in charitable gifts, lifetime and estate gifts. And then it was 250, and then it was 500. And I've not been in the practice of continuing to set that. I felt like I was spending more time tracking it than I was helping clients. But when I look around the room, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's 7 billion. Maybe I have enough years in me that I might facilitate another billion, but collectively maybe we could, multiply that many times over. So that's what I'm thinking. All right, I'm dredging up something from my past. The 12 years that I spent was a firm called Renaissance, and it had a nickname. It was called the Social Capital Company. And I'm going to do this really quickly, but this had a big impact on me when I was just beginning to understand this concept. So social capital, we'll kind of get at what this means. We all have 2 kinds of capital. And so we're going to call it our personal financial capital and our personal social capital. And so what we have that's ours, we can use to satisfy our needs and our family's needs. Our personal social capital is either going to go to charity or go to taxes. We have a tax law that will make the default taxes. If you don't choose to plan, then by default, your social capital will all go to taxes. If you make a plan, you can shift that where most or almost all of your social capital, if you choose, could go in the form of charitable gifts. So this is one area where I think our tax laws We don't give Congress a lot of credit at times for what they have, but they've designed these tools and techniques in a way that gives some encouragement to people to give generously. They've studied if that's a good idea, and what they've found is there's a study called the Filer Commission that was done. When they give up $1 of tax revenue because of a charitable deduction, something like $1.20 to $1.50 of benefits accrues to society. So it was mentioned today that Americans give something like $400 billion a year, which is a remarkable number, over $1 billion a day. No other country in the world does anything like that. But this is how I think America became great and will be great, is if we look around and we take responsibility for addressing the problems in our community and we self-direct our social capital. So my old boss at Renaissance would have spent another couple hours building on this concept of social capital, but I'm going to leave it at that, and if you ever want to hear more about it, I'd be glad to chat with you. Okay, let's start to get specific. I wanted to give you some specific things to chew on. Donor advised funds. Would you be comfortable saying, do you have a donor advised fund? Who has a donor advised fund or a giving fund? Okay, so many. We had just a handful of clients, maybe 2 or 3, 6, 7 years ago, that had donor advised funds. And then we set them up for ourselves. We decided to gain some experience with those, and we started doing that. And then we started talking to every single client about donor advised funds. And I'll talk about that in a little bit further, but it's a really powerful tool. It has no downside to creating one. Actually, Josh is in the back of the room. If you wanted a donor advised fund and we had a good Wi-Fi connection, we could set up your donor advised fund in about 6 minutes. What's your record? 3 minutes. Okay. All right, Josh. All right. That's a challenge. I'm gonna come back to the donor advised fund, but this is a tool that you ought to experiment with and gain some experience with, and then you should share it with your clients. We've been shocked at how many clients love this idea, not necessarily on first hearing, but on gaining some experience with it. So we will very frequently set up a donor advised fund for a client. They'll put some money into the fund that they were going to give away, and then they'll start experiencing the benefits of that. And that the one client I was talking about, he calls us twice a year, very successful physician. He wanted to retire. Now he doesn't want to retire. He wants to work so he can make money, so he can give more money away. He'll call us twice a year, says, I've got $80,000 in my checking account. Would you help me identify which are my most appreciated securities to give to my giving fund, and then pull the $80,000 in from my checking account, and you can repurchase securities and maintain my investment portfolio. That's in a nutshell how that works. Aaron, did you have a question?
No, I was just saying that ups the basis.
Right. So if I have I'm going to use an example, but if I've got an appreciated stock that's doubled in value over however many years, I've got a built-in capital gain. I have a low basis, but if I give that away and then take the cash and repurchase it, now I have basis equal to value. I don't have any more embedded tax in that position. I'm able to have as much or more in my investments, and I get a double tax benefit on my giving. So people love that. It allows them to give more and to have a better efficiency in their investment portfolio. So I've already kind of talked about number 1 and 2, so I'll probably go kind of fast. I want to be sure to spend time talking about qualified charitable distributions. This is a really important thing for your older clients. If God allows me to live to 70 and a half, I look forward to having those required minimum distributions, but maybe I won't need them, and that's how I'll do some of my charitable giving. I'm going to explain what the benefits of that are coming up here in just a second. I'm going to talk about a charitable remainder trust. This tool, when I was at Renaissance between 1990 and 2002, the stock market was going crazy. It was almost like a new tool that people didn't know about, and advisors got pretty excited about it. It just seems like people have forgotten about it to me. I don't think advisors are using this very much. I'm going to share an example of that and help you think about where that might fit in. And I'm going to talk about how to use a charitable trust at death for retirement dollars. I think that's something that many of our clients might consider. I'll show how that would work and how that, in my opinion, is superior to any alternative you have for an IRA or retirement plan when you pass away. I'm not going to talk about charitable lead trust and bargain sales and life estates. There's too much to talk about here. That could be another day that we might talk about some of those things. So this is in a nutshell, couldn't get that out. This is in a nutshell how a donor advised fund or a giving fund works. You set up a giving fund or a donor advised fund with a community foundation. There are many to choose from. National Christian Foundation, Indiana, is a fantastic one. We've set up giving funds for several dozen of our clients at National Christian Foundation. Great website. You can go on and create the fund. You can manage all your giving through the fund. But the way you start is you just simply establish it. You put some cash or appreciated assets into the giving fund. When you do that, you get a tax deduction. And if you've put in something appreciated, you avoid the capital gain. And here it sits in the giving fund. Then, as you decide the timing, you and your spouse, and someday if you want to give this privilege to your children, they could have the privilege and responsibility of deciding how to give that out, which charities, which 501c3 public charities to give those to. We like to spread our giving around. We like to support a lot of different ministries and nonprofits, so at tax time, I would be looking for a dozen or 20 charitable gift letters for our taxes. Now I'm generally looking for one. We might do some of our giving outside of our giving fund, but this simplifies life. I can also see how are we doing in terms of our commitment to increasing in generosity. The website gives you all kinds of reports and tools so that you can see how you've added to the fund and what you've distributed to, what kind of causes. You set up one-time gifts. You can set up systematic monthly gifts or quarterly gifts. You can do a lot of things out of a giving fund. And I mentioned step number 3, if you're integrating this tool with the way you do saving and investing, then after you've made the gift of appreciated securities, you would take the cash you would have otherwise given and put it back into your giving fund. And as we've said, you're reestablishing your cost basis. You now have if you want to kind of share the additional tax savings, you could actually be giving more and retaining more inside your investment portfolio. Maybe I should have just paused for a question, because this is one that I think the Charitable Remainder Trust, you're going to have some clients that's a good tool for, but in my opinion, as many as half of our clients are candidate. We haven't got to all of them yet. We're getting close to half, I think, but I think many of your clients are good candidates for donor advised funds. Does anyone have a question about them? Yes. Well, there's no fee to set it up. There's a fee to maintain it. And so it costs about 1%, but sometimes less than that, to maintain the fund for all the systems that they have and all the expert staff that they have to help manage this. But about 1%. It does vary from one community foundation to another. I think it's very small. I think we've started with 1,000 or 2. I guess it would be okay to start with less, but when we're talking to someone and they give, I was going to tell a story about one client of ours, and I'm going to call her Debbie. Debbie, my partner asked me to come in and talk to her about her donor, just share the idea. And I didn't know her at all, but I was able to look at her investments, and she had one stock worth $25,000 with a cost basis of only $1,000, kind of remarkable. So I said, I'll just make an example out of that. Well, I started by asking her, what do you like to give to, and can you give me some idea of your level? And it was a painful 10 minutes where she, there's this church that I used to go to. I used to give them $1,500, and we stayed in that stratosphere. It's like, I don't know if this example is going to fly. But I just did it real quickly, I don't know, Debbie, if you'd like this idea, but if you put this into your giving fund, you get a $25,000 deduction, you avoid the $24,000 gain, then you can just give that money away. And she said, well, let me stop you right there. That sounds great. Can we do that today? And then she's badgering us to get it up and running and get the stock sold in her giving fund so she could start giving it away. But we've been shocked at how many people that we didn't necessarily think would get excited, but they latched onto the idea, and we've had a lot of experiences like that. So the fees, end up, it's not really a barrier to it. It's not like setting up a private foundation or something like that. I think you had a question, Aaron?
Yeah, it was probably going to get into more of the weeds of the tax planning side of things, and I don't know if should I ask that now or later.
Let's see if I can give a 15-second answer, but
when you do a cash donation, you usually get a 60% deduction of up to your AGI, correct? And then an appreciated asset is generally 30% of your AGI.
right.
How does that work in the donor advice fund? Is that?
Yep, I can answer that one fairly quickly. I think I'll do it with an example. Let's say we have somebody who has an AGI, adjusted gross income, of $50,000. They, I shouldn't have done that because I can't do 60% of 50,000. Or yeah, I can do 60%. That'd be 30,000. Okay, so $50,000 AGI. They could put 30,000 of cash into their donor advised fund, and that's a 50%. They can claim that up to 60% of their adjusted gross income. If they're putting in appreciated assets, then their deduction on that contribution would be limited to 30% of their adjusted gross income. So
the same rules.
Same rules apply. There are different rules that apply to private foundations, and those are more restrictive. So that wasn't too technical, but I think I'll go on to another example. And let me see how I'm doing on time. I think I need to speed up, don't I? Am I okay?
30 minutes.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
I ran into a situation recently with a couple that wanted to do some stock gifting.
Stock gifts?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And they were telling me they actually wanted to give to 30 different charities.
Right.
And so they said, I can have my advisor
Right.
send to those 30 different charities directly, but it costs me $50 every time I do one of them. Each one of them is like $50. Is that typical?
Trying to think where that fee would come in, but it would be very cumbersome. So that if you didn't hear the question, I guess for the tape, but if you had someone who wanted to give some stock to 30 different charities, and they were going to experience fees, but if not fees, a lot of complexity, I would think, to send it out to 30 different places. I think my first experience with giving appreciated securities was personally giving mutual fund shares, and I believe the first 2 times it happened, it got messed up. In one case, the mutual fund family sent my entire account, not the number of shares that I asked, and so it was double what I meant to give, and like $200 or something probably. But your point, the donor advised fund is a great tool for that. These community foundations have systems to handle stock gifts. Some charities can handle a stock gift or a mutual fund gift, but some of them are really going to struggle with that. It's going to be very cumbersome. If you dropped it into your giving fund at National Christian Foundation, securities get sold, you could send the money very quickly out to the 30 charities. It would be so much more efficient than the idea of trying to do that to 30 separate or even 3 separate charities. So
400 of those, but we don't charge our.
you did 400.
This was a bank, it was actually First Merchant Bank stock.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not really sure whether it's whoever handles it for First Merchants
Yeah.
is charging this fee.
Yeah,
Seems like
I'm not familiar with that fee, but it sounds like they could have done one fee, one transfer of a larger sum to a donor advised fund.
that's what they had.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'm going to use this story. This is not her name really in her picture, but this is a person, and it really is kind of a homage. Is that the right word? Homage? Something? We see stories like this all the time. Here Joan is 75, she's widowed, she has 2 kids she loves, she and her husband gave throughout their marriage. They love to give, they love their family. The only thing I don't like about this example, I'm going to talk about things that are like planned giving, and some people have the belief that planned giving ideas are for widows or who don't have even any children, and that's not the case. These ideas apply to relatively young individuals and couples, but I'm going to go ahead with this story. So this was an example. I made this claim that we could sometimes show someone, if we integrate the disciplines of financial planning, estate planning, and charitable planning, we'll help them give much more. And this is a very practical illustration of how an individual could potentially give 37 times more than what they were giving. So Joan was giving roughly 10% of her income in the form of cash gifts, and we ended up demonstrating 4 different ways she could give differently and confidently give much more. So one of them I'm going to talk about in some detail is a charitable remainder trust. This is actually, it sounds like a charitable planning tool. It really is a financial planning tool. A charitable remainder trust provides lifetime benefits to an individual or a married couple, or in some cases, where appropriate, for 2 generations. So this charitable trust is going to provide nothing but financial benefits and tax benefits to Joan and then her children, and then finally one day it's going to leave a significant amount to charity. And this is a tool that can enhance someone's financial position. The sweet spot is someone that has appreciated assets that are low income producing. And so that sometimes they have a concentrated position. We'll find people have a concentrated position. They leave their big Fortune 500 job and they've got a bunch of stock. And it's a concentrated position. They have a lot of risk. If they were to sell it, they would pay a tax. But we'll talk about the charitable remainder trust and how that works for them and their children and for charity. I'm going to get to the example of QCDs pretty quickly. I'm going to do this. We're going to talk about what to do with an IRA at death, either leave it to charity or leave it to a charitable remainder trust for the children or possibly even the grandchildren. So I think I stuck this in here. The other thing that helps someone get confident about giving more is to have a financial plan that gives them clarity and confidence. And I'm so grateful for Ron Blue coming up with such a beautifully simple concept of the 5 uses of money. This is how we build our financial plans. How are you allocating your income this year or last year? How much are you giving, saving, paying taxes, paying back debt, and the rest is being spent on your lifestyle? People love this once they get their hands around it. Most people don't have a good, clear budget, but we can pick it apart when we look at their tax return and a few other bits of information and just lay this out for them. This is how you're allocating your 5 uses of money. What do you like the most? What do you like the least? What do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? Are there ways that we could give differently and save differently so you pay less tax? Are there ways that we could get you out of debt sooner if they're not already out of debt? And then a big one is, which our world doesn't help us in this, but how much are you spending on your lifestyle? Are you content with it? Could you say that? Yes, I'm content with that. Do you want to just keep up with inflation, or is there something else that you do want and need? Either could be fine, but getting clarity around that, because what doesn't work is just the endless accumulation of wealth and endless accumulation of accelerated spending. And so it seems to help people a lot to get clear, what are they spending? Are you content? And then can we look out into the future and build a plan that gets you what you want and need, but allows you to give more generously? So I kind of stuck that in here, but this is how we get people comfortable giving more, is by revealing to them how their whole plan fits together. The right-hand side is the other dimension, is in the estate plan. Like, there's only 3 possibilities then. You're either going to give it to your kids, you're going to pay taxes, you're going to pay, or you're going to give it to charity. And often the default is taxes. The default plan is the kids get whatever's left over after taxes and expenses. Most of our clients don't have federal estate taxes. We don't have an Indiana inheritance tax, but almost all of our clients have a fair amount of income tax built into their retirement accounts that the kids will either pay in a lump sum, usually, or spread out over time from the IRAs. And like I say, we've got something to share there. This is just the charitable remainder trust. I'm going to do it quickly. I know you've read about it, you've studied it. Maybe is this a tool that you've been able to use in your practice? Do you have clients that have charitable remainder trusts? A few. So the way it works essentially is that you put assets into this trust. It's a separate trust. It has its own tax ID number. It's a tax-exempt trust, so you can put in appreciated assets and they can be sold. There's no tax owed. We keep all that money at work inside the trust. You also get a deduction. You're making a irrevocable future gift to charity, so you don't get a dollar-for-dollar deduction. You get a fraction of the value going in. That's a complicated story and calculation. But then in this scenario, income for life to Frank and Joan, I switched it to Frank and Joan, and now we have the children. And then what happens finally is it goes down to charity, which can be a giving fund, it could be a donor-advised fund. The grandchildren could have the privilege of, they'll inherit wealth from their parents, but they could also have the privilege and opportunity to help distribute those dollars out to public charity. Or Frank and Joan can decide that at the beginning, where they want that to go. So I do have, by the way, I decided not to hand a handout at the beginning, but I can provide you with a set of these slides if it would be helpful to you. I just want to pause here just for a second. This is a picture of what, this was a $600,000 example. This is what it might look like over the lifetime of Frank and Joan and their children. So I don't know what the future earnings are going to be, but if we believe that it was possible that this sum of money, $600,000, that if it could earn 7% over a long period of time, average, 7% average, we're paying out 5%, and it's earning 7%, that's 2% growth. The eighth wonder of the world, is it, that compound interest? I mean, it's unbelievable, but over a 50-year period of time, $600,000 turns into something like $25 million. And this is a great advantage to the family to have capital growing inside of a tax-exempt trust. If we had a big year like last year, this money probably would have generated a lot of taxes. They weren't going to, last year they might have, what was the S&P last year? Was it 20-something? So a diversified portfolio might have been 15, or, I mean, everything went up last year as I recall. But so in a year like that, you pay a lot of taxes typically, but here you don't, because it's a tax-exempt trust. You don't pay the big tax when you put in the appreciated asset. You don't have the big tax when you have a big year. The capital can grow more effectively over a long period of time. Do you think this would be a pretty good account to manage over your career? And these are sticky dollars, and they create a lot of goodwill and a lot of benefits. So this is a very predictable stream of income. It's 5% of the value, so it isn't going to be quite as pretty of a curve, but you're getting 5% of the value every year. It won't earn exactly 7 every year, of course. Those assets are protected from creditors. Frank and Joan could know that they're going to get some benefit from it, and they could know that their children are going to get benefit from it. And obviously someday it's going to go to charity. I could go on and on telling stories about variations on how the charitable remainder trust works, but this is a very powerful tool. There's a few companies in the country that could be really helpful to you if you've not done many of these. One of them is here in Indianapolis. It's a firm that I worked for a few years. I don't have any connection with them now, except they're a vendor, so to speak, of ours. Renaissance is a third-party administrator of charitable remainder trusts, and there's a few other firms around the country that we've worked with from time to time that do similar work. But there are some great resources to help you put these kind of plans together. I'm not going to read through all these, but I just kind of summarized what the financial and tax benefits would be to the wealth owner and to their children. And again, the eighth wonder of the world, it's pretty remarkable how the numbers add up if it's just growing 2% year by year by year. So very powerful tool that could help enhance someone's cash flow. This doesn't really do anything for charity for a long, long time, unless it helps the individual in their cash flow. They're in a better place. They've got more cash flow, more secure, less taxes. That should free them up to give more generously possibly from other sources, including what I'm going to talk about next, which is the qualified charitable distribution. Now I'm going to skip that summary. It'll be in the handout. I guess I said it was next, but I was thinking of the order. I was mixed up a little bit. Here I'm going to talk about what do you do with the IRA when you die. What most of us do, if a married couple, it'll go, dad dies first, it goes to mom, no tax. Mom dies, it goes to the kids. Maybe they're in their peak earning years. I think statistically something like 95% cash it out upon receipt, pay the tax in a lump sum, and many of them blow the rest in a very short period of time. So if they're in their peak earning years doing pretty well, they might lose 30 or 40% of the assets, and we have 60% left. If the kids are inheriting other property, we're finding this to be pretty appealing to a lot of people, but the kids are going to inherit the house and the other investments not in a retirement account. So what some will do is just leave the IRA to a donor advised fund, and the kids will inherit other wealth, and they could have the privilege of directing these dollars. It could be a great way to bless your children to do that. Now, Mom might speak up or Dad might speak up at this point, but I want the kids to get more. I don't want to deny them what they might have gotten over here. So there's a variety of things that could be done. One of them would be to buy some life insurance on Mom and Dad, and maybe you draw extra money out of the retirement account in order to pay for that. Maybe that draws the retirement account down a little bit, but provide the kids with a tax-free death benefit from the life insurance, and then provide tax-free benefits down to the donor advised fund with the remainder in the IRA. There's one more idea, and that's, I've mentioned it earlier. It's the same concept that I shared a moment ago with the graph on the charitable remainder trust. At the second death of the parent, the IRA could come down into a charitable remainder trust for the children. It's a tax-exempt trust, so the trust realizes the IRD income, but it's tax-exempt, so there's no tax paid. So we keep all the money at work, working for the next generation. If you look at the dynamic of the cash flow on this, it's probably superior to a stretch IRA if you think of that as an alternative. With a stretch IRA, you're forced to take a larger and larger amount out every year, and in fact it's designed to exhaust the inherited IRA. In many cases, if the children have good life expectancy, they'll probably exhaust the fund before they die. So the CRT would create the possibility of giving them an income stream that they cannot outlive, and the capital inside this tax-exempt environment could be more productive and provide more benefit to them and ultimately more benefit to charity. So we think that's a pretty attractive idea. We have a lot of clients that will say yes to that. They want that built into their estate plan. You need a document. You need to be able to form that. There's different ways of doing it, but you need either during life you form the charitable remainder trust and it receives the assets later, or you build a charitable remainder trust into the will or into a revocable living trust, and it gets created or funded at the right time. Got a little tickle. Okay, I'm going to talk about qualified charitable distributions. I think this is the last more technical piece, and I think I'm going to do it at a fairly high level, but this is an example. It works differently in a lot of different circumstances, but in this example we have someone making $120,000 a year, and we're going to explore, how much they're going to give, how they should give, and maybe a great question for us to ask sometimes is, how much do we want to keep? And so here's a client giving the tithe, but giving from cash, and if you run this through a tax calculator, I'm leaving out some of the details, but paying about $11,000 in tax, and they've got $93,000 to spend. If this client simply switched from giving cash to giving from their IRA, what I'm talking about is someone who's after 70.5, they have a required minimum distribution. If they take it personally, they pay tax on it. If they give it to charity, they don't. And so if they simply sent a portion of their RMD, rather, if they send a portion of their RMD to charity, that's called a qualified charitable distribution. They don't put that income on their tax return anymore. Their taxable income goes way down, and so they pay $8,000 instead of $11,300, and they've got $3,000 more to spend if they gave the same amount. Another possibility would be that they would give more. Here, give almost $4,000 more, and it's a kind of a break even because of the tax savings. Say they could give $4,000 more, pay about $4,000 less. I could have calculated, I forget, maybe I did calculate. Well, it was $1 off, I guess. I was $1 off. They have $1 less. They gave almost $4,000 more to charity, but they have $1,000 left after taxes and after gifts. But maybe giving more beyond that. You know, show someone an example. Just excuse me. This will take some calculations. I haven't found software to do this. I'd be happy to. I have to put a disclaimer on it, but I've created a pretty big spreadsheet to look at this, to look at all the benefits, and I think I'll just take these off kind of quickly. If we don't bring this IRA withdrawal onto our tax return, obviously we're going to have less taxable income. We might be in a lower tax bracket with our marginal dollars. We may end up paying less tax on Social Security. Many of our clients that have a lot of income are paying tax on 85% of their Social Security benefit, but if they take some of this off their income tax return, it'll drop them down. Now maybe they're paying tax on 60% of their Social Security benefit or less. You can also drop below a threshold where you were paying 15% tax on qualified dividends and long-term capital gain, but now you're paying 0 on some of that or all of that income. So you can have multiple layers of benefit here. I haven't studied this too carefully, but I know Medicare premiums are based upon how much income you have, and you could drop your future Medicare premiums by dropping it down. So this is a pretty powerful way. I think this is a way for some people to give 50% more, and maybe they'll see a way to give more than twice as much by giving from their IRA. Yes?
Can you only give your RMD? Can you give more than that?
You can give more than your required minimum distribution. You can give up to $100,000 per year. And a married couple, if they both have dollars in plans, they could give up to $200,000 per year. We have a couple clients that are going to do just that. They've done well. They're going to hit 70 in a year or so. They have a nice lifestyle, but they've saved really hard over the years. They've got more than they need. They don't need to bring this RMD onto their tax return, and they love the idea of giving it away. So they've got some really fun plans coming up. So $100,000 a year. That one I think is not, a lot of our tax rules are adjusted for inflation. That's one that's not, as far as I know. It'll be $100,000 a year until Congress decides it could be bigger than that.
Brent, what would you recommend for somebody who's turning 70 this year, 70 and a half this year? Would you say go ahead and do your RMD this year because you don't really have to do it until April of next year, right? In that first year?
We almost always, they have to double up next year if they do that. So we usually get started with the plan. We go ahead and get them started taking withdrawals. But if they're charitably inclined, we would encourage them this year to let's do some of it out of the RMD rather than a cash gift, or even it's even better than an appreciated asset gift. So, yep. Okay. I think this is one, now not all of our clients are 70 and a half, but this is one that I think many of us could facilitate a lot of gifts, and I think our clients will be grateful for that. We'll keep it off their tax return, and we might go beyond what they've been giving, or again, try to get to that fourth question, like model something for them, and they may get pretty excited about it. It may be an opportunity for them to do something significant, something that is significant to them. I think there I gave you some of the details, and it'll be in the handout, but this is one of those where I have a tendency to put way too much on a slide, so I tried to avoid that. But in this example, the client went from, they paid tax on some of their qualified dividends and long-term capital gain in the first scenario, but we got them to the place where they were not going to pay any tax on their qualified dividends and long-term capital gain, and we also dropped them down to where they were only going to pay tax on 67% of their Social Security income. So you can kind of measure these things. If you find a tool that is, like I said, I've got a spreadsheet that I'm happy to share with a disclaimer. You can play with it and see if you think it is helpful. Did you have a question?
Just a comment. I've started doing quite a bit of these because you've got a lot of people that have been itemizing.
Yes.
Shareable
No, I'm glad you're
not going to be able to do that anymore.
right.
So then
This.
qualified income and now they don't have to itemize.
Right. That's a really good point. I'm glad you added that, because if you claim that now a married couple is going to claim a $24,000 deduction, and some of our clients I think are going to be in a better place. They're going to pay less tax just because of that. But then if we just do the giving this way, they're going to pay even less tax. They can afford to be even more generous. So that's a really good observation. I think I meant to say that because I think under tax reform, this is one of the big things. Unfortunately, it only applies to our clients that are 70 and a half and older. So I think really the last slide here, I wanted to send you off with some encouragement. If you don't have a donor advised fund, I want to encourage you to set one up. Here's Gary Martin with NCF Indiana. We have some others here with NCF Indiana. Really tiny risk here you're taking. The only thing you're risking is a little bit of your time. Get one set up and gain some experience with it. I think you'll find it quite satisfactory. You can be a part of a really cool community too when you're doing that. You meet other people. They have some events that are great. But then I think I think it was Ron Blue who said you can't take someone where you've not gone yourself. So if you gain some experience with a donor advised fund, I think your confidence will increase that this is something that some of your loved ones or some of your clients would also benefit from. So I already said that one. Give me a call if I can be helpful. Call Renaissance or there's another company, Charitable Trust Administration Company out of Cleveland. Find people. They also do help with charitable remainder trusts, so they can help an advisor with that. We've just gotten here. We started at one point, talked about why wouldn't we do this. We've just found that people are interested in this idea. I've not met that person yet there's somebody I've heard he doesn't have a charitable bone in his body. I haven't met that person. I've met some people that are not very far out on the limb there, but people do like these ideas when they see that there's ways that they could give with greater efficiency and potentially give more. So I just want to encourage you to build your confidence in this area. Start talking to people about it if you're not doing that very much more. That last one, we're trying to do this now is just share with ministry leaders and board members. I just thought some of the discussions today about it's Issachar and Zebulun, is that right? Is that the two tribes? We do speak a different language, but I think if we come together, we have insights that could really make our world a better place, bring the kingdom to earth, and I just want to encourage you to pursue that. You could come alongside your church or other ministries and nonprofits, learn these things, and begin teaching others, board members of charities and other supporters, show people how they could give more generously. And thanks for coming to my session.